Judge Tony Pagoni has been appointed to lead an independent review into the flooding of the Maribyrnong River last year. 6 months after the flood damaged hundreds of homes, many residents are still rebuilding, worried little is being done to improve warnings and reduce the impacts of future floods.
This is where Jane Trewin has spent the last 40 years of her life. But after last year's floods, it no longer looks like her home.
Yep. So the water levels were about here.
She had about an hour's notice to evacuate her Maribyrnong home.
Because at least if we had had a proper warning like 24 hours before or whatever, and we knew the exact level, not this other level that they said it was going to be, I would have moved stuff.
Others had so little warning, they became trapped on roofs or rescued by boat. Melbourne Water is responsible for flood modelling, which evacuation notices are based off. One of its former engineers says its river flow calculations from further upstream were wildly wrong.
That's what they were recording and using for their flood warnings and predictions, and this is what was actually happening at the same time.
It's just massively off.
3 times a factor of error, yeah.
The water expert has previously disagreed with Melbourne Water over flood protection measures for the Maribyrnong. He is adamant residents could have had several hours' notice if calculations were correct.
Well, it's amazing that no one was killed.
Melbourne Water is running one of 2 reviews into last year's floods, but critics say its scope is too narrow. It won't be examining issues like emergency responses to the disaster, flood warnings, or what needs to be done to reduce the impacts of future floods.
The fear is that given the limited scope of the Melbourne Water Review, that it'll be more of a ticker box exercise.
The Mayor says Council is already concerned about damaged homes being rebuilt without any consideration for future flood risk.
Residents can rebuild like for like and be subject to exactly the same threats of a flood event.
Melbourne Water says it revises flood predictions during flood events. It says it updated its Maribyrnong flood modelling once real data was obtained. It's expected to send its review to the Victorian Government by the end of the year. Elise Kinsella, ABC News, Melbourne.
Victorians will be able